Okay. Today we're going to speak about something integral to Jewish life, and that is davening. And davening in Yiddish is often understood as prayer. But like many things, what everyone thinks they understand it as is usually wrong. People are wrong, and they're wrong a lot. And something as vital to Judaism as davening or tefillah, prayer is not a good translation. We're not going to really speak about the translation. I'm going to speak more about what does it mean to daven. What does it mean to pray? All right, so we look at page 41, the exercise. Think about a time when you prayed to God, you found it difficult to focus. You come to shul, and you know you're there, but you can't get into it. Or now think of a time when you prayed and it did work. What helped it work? In this lesson, we're going to explore the topic of prayer, and hopefully, you make a good experience of it, and you learn something to take away. So, in last week's class, we were talking about this is the time of the counting of the Omer, and we discussed at length that this is a time of self-improvement. We all have to work on ourselves to improve. The counting of the Omer is the mitzvah you do every day, and we're getting closer to the holiday of Shavuos. That we live the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai, so we have to ready ourselves. It's a major event, and you have to prepare. So, the idea of Shavuos, the Jewish people of God were united. So, it's given the examples given in the Gemara that the Mount Sinai is compared to a wedding. God was the groom, the Jewish people are like the bride. The 10 Commandments, the tablets, is the marriage contract. But in a micro, not on a grand scale like that, but that happens every day. How? Through davening. Now, the Hebrew word for davening, tefillah, explained in the Torah, comes from the word to connect. The first time we see this word is when Leah has, she doesn't have, I should say, through her maidservant Zilpah, she has Naphtali. And Naphtali, Leah says, now I will be connected to my husband. Naftule lekin Naftalti, because I had all these boys, I had all these children. So the word, so the name to tefillah really means to connect. So one of the themes that we speak about in davening, I'll use davening, the Yiddish word for prayer, right? Anyone's watching, davening equals prayer, or tefillah equals prayer. I'm always lectured by my wife that I use too many Hebraic or Yiddish terms, and people don't understand. To me, yeah, you grew up with it, but if I do, stop me. So in the holiday of Shavuos, we talk about we celebrate the giving of the Torah, and many times in davening, in the course of davening, we mentioned the Exodus. Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, took us out of Egypt, and brought us to the mountain of Sinai, and because of that, we have to serve Him. So, for example, the very first of the 10 Commandments, it says, I am your God. I took you out of Egypt, from the house of slaves. And Rashi in the commentary there says, just because of that, forget anything else I did, split the sea, give you man and the water. Forget all that. Just the fact that I took you out of Egypt, just that you owe me big and you should serve me. Now, one of the topics we're going to discuss tonight is, what does it mean to serve God? What does it mean? Get him a drink? What is serving God? Dance around the fire? I mean, Lag B'Omer is coming around. Ugachak, gotta paint our faces, right? What does it mean?
Get back to you?
Huh?
Did Shemi get back to you?
Yeah, he's bringing wood. So serving of God, we're going to learn today, is about davening, and we see it's brought down in the Gemara, and this is, you see in the Gemara Brachas, page 1a, that there's a very strong element between talking about Exodus and serving God and davening. See, text number 1, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, who gets a place in the world to come? This is somebody who puts together geula, redemption, to davening. So, what does it mean, geula, redemption? Because in the blessing, you have Shema, And Shema, you have the blessing before and the blessing after. The blessing before, we speak about how God created the luminaries in the sky, the sun, the moon, and all that, right? The constellations. Then you have Shema, and then afterwards we speak about how God took us out of Egypt, how God redeemed us. They're pretty much the same in the morning and the evening, the same topic, not the same blessing, but the same topic. So we go from thanking God for taking us out of Egypt to the Amidah. Rabbi Yochanan says that's very very important. Now, why is it so important? They have to speak about the Exodus from Egypt and prayer. Look at text number 1b. This is from a rabbi. I don't think we've ever come across him in our classes. He's called the Rif. You ever heard of the Rif before? The Rif. It's an abbreviation from Rabbi Yonah from Gerona. And he was an halachic giant, halachic authority, and you could find his commentary printed in the backs of many Gemaras. I think we have the Gemara back there with his, and in the Shiva, when you learned the Talmud, you learned the Talmud at the front, but then you got to turn to the back. You learned the Ran and the Rif. So he was at the time where, like, that was right after this sort of split between Ashkenazic and Sephardic communities. So for a long time there was only Sephardic rabbis and Ashkenazic rabbis, but then the community started. So this Rif, this Rabbi Yonah, he was one of the people that were educated by both Ashkenazic and Sephardic rabbis. So he was kind of a broad. He's a great man, right? You see his bio on the side. So he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm going to put this thing on Do Not Disturb 1 second. Bam. All right. There you go. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, redeemed us from Egypt. This is text page 43. And to be a servant, as it says, for you are my servants who I brought you out of the land. We mentioned God's kindness to us, and prayer is also service. As the Talmud says, to love God and to serve Him with all your heart. And when we mention the Exodus, and we immediately pray, so what are we doing? We're demonstrating that just as a servant is obligated to follow his master's command, so do we recognize the kindness that Hashem did to us, that we are indentured to His service. So recognizing that we are God's servant because He redeemed us, it motivates us to fulfill His mitzvahs. That's why it's so important. So you go straight from thanking God that He redeemed us into serving Him. Because what happens many times is, we thank God, yeah, how's everything? Thank God, right? But how thank God is it? One of the things I've often said, you go to different cultures and different people, we're not going to say it who, but you guys can imagine. And the people are they wear their religion on their sleeve, or they're very public, but they don't act according to what their religion says they should. So why are you wearing that necklace? Or why are you wearing that on your head, or whatever it is? The problem is it's abstract. It's not internalized. And what the Torah wants us is to internalize these things. So you go straight from thanking God from doing this kindness to serving Him. Talking about internalizing, I said, I'll tell you a story. Especially when it comes to the topic of tefillah, of davening, there are a lot of Hasidic stories. And one class is not enough, but we'll give a few. So this story, so Michael J is not here, so we're going to punish him. So this story is told. So the first, the Hasidic Rebbe, the founder of the Hasidic movement, was the Baal Shem Tov. His student, who later became the Rebbe, his name was Reb Daven. He was the Maggid of Mezrich. Now originally he wasn't a follower of the Baal Shem Tov. The whole story in itself, how he became a follower of the Baal Shem Tov. But he became a follower, he became a Rebbe. Anyway, one day he's visited by a friend of his that was a friend in his younger years. And the Maggid of Mezrich wasn't great because he came to the Baal Shem Tov. He was great before. The Baal Shem Tov helped him reach levels that he didn't even really knew yet. But he was a great scholar and mystic and etc., MD, DDS, PO, all the PhD. He was great before. So his friend comes and with him, and he notices how the Maggid davens hours and hours. And this guy, he was a scholar, and he knew, forget the translation of the words, that's child's play. He knew all the mystical, intentions, interpretations. So he asked him and so he asked the Maggid, so I learn with you. We both learned the same thing. So why does it take you so long to daven? So now this gentleman, who was the Maggid's friend, his arrangement he had with his wife was, because he was a great scholar, his wife ran the local like grocery store or Trader Joe's, right? Isn't that a trading post, right? Right? For the whole year, he sat and learned. But once a year, he had to go to Leipzig. You ever heard of that town, Leipzig?
Yeah, Leipzig, Germany.
Leipzig was was a place where that was the big fear. And he would go to Leipzig and you'd buy the merchandise. I mean, she wasn't going to go to the, this is the 1700s. You're not going to send a woman to the fair. Sorry if anyone gets offended. The 1750s weren't as advanced as now. So he would go. So the Maggid asks him, let me ask you a question. Instead of going to Leipzig, why don't you sit down and picture in your mind going to Leipzig, getting the merchandise, put it on the wagon, coming back. And the trip will take you a lot faster. This way you don't have to waste your time, waste your money, waste your energy. So the friend says to him, that's very nice, but I need the merchandise. So the Maggid tells him, when I daven, I need the merchandise. I mean, it's not abstract. It's internalized, and that takes time. Okay, so before we get more into that, the concept of time and to internalize, let's first talk about the mitzvah of davening. Is there a mitzvah to daven? Is there a commandment to daven? We know, for example, there's a mitzvah to say Shema, right? There's a mitzvah to eat matzah and Pesach. There's a mitzvah to count the Eimer. There's a mitzvah to tefillin. Everything's our explicit mitzvahs. Thou shalt or thou shalt not. Is there a mitzvah to daven? So one thing's for sure.
Is there?
So one thing's for sure.
It depends.
So obviously, based on the question, based on the question, it's not explicit, because if it was explicit in the Torah, there wouldn't be a question. The Torah says, "Thou shalt daven." If it said daven in Yiddish, that would be pretty crazy. No, but it said, you have to daven. Then the thing is, it doesn't say you have to daven. So there's actually an argument between, it's quoted in many places, but let's keep it simple, between Maimonides and Nachmanides, between the Rambam and Ramban, Moshe ben Nachman, Moshe ben Maimon. Is it a mitzvah or not? According to the Rambam, it's a mitzvah. Straight out, commandment. He counts it as one of the 613 commandments. Just to branch off on the side. We have tradition that there are 613 commandments. There's a massive argument between the group, the codifiers of law. They're called the Rishonim. So you have the rabbis of the Mishnah called the Tanoim, the rabbis of the Gemara called the Amoraim. Then you have Rabbanu Savarai. They sort of closed the Gemara, right? Then you have the Gaonim. The Gaonim, they were the ones that extrapolated law based on questions and answers that people would send them. They're the Gaonim. Then the next period, like Rashi, Rambam, Ramban, the Rif, the Ran, the Rashba, Marsha, Rabbi Yosef Karo, the Ramah, all these, they're very famous names, they're called the Rishonim. These were the ones, the Taz, the Shach, these were the ones, so basically from the year 1000 to the year 1500. Give or take. So they were the ones that codified law. And one of the things they did was they wrote down the 613 commandments. So most of the commandments everyone agrees on. Right? Don't murder. Right? That's easy.
It's in the top 10.
No. See, but it's easy to know it's one of the numbers. Where they argue is on the other ones. Other ones. There's like 15 or 20 that are up for debate. So is davening a commandment? So according to the Rambam, the Maimonides, you see in text 4b, straight out. It's 4a. My page. No, I'm sorry, not 4. I'm sorry, my thing. 2a. Sorry. According to the Rambam, straight out, it's a mitzvah. Now, does it say the word tefillah? No, it says serve Hashem. What does it mean? What does it mean to serve Hashem? Serve Hashem how? To do the mitzvahs? The Torah is not redundant. Oh, by the way, what I said before, I was serious. It mean serve me, don't serve idols. That's not what it means over here. What it means is And the Gemara says, when it's serve Hashem means to daven. So he says, so you see text 2b, the Sefer Chinuch, if you look on the shelf over there, see a set of yellow books. 1 second. I'll be right back. And I'll set it off camera.
You want to go dance in front of the camera, you know? Give people something to see.
I'm sorry for you.
No. What's this loss?
So sorry for the
Bruins.
in the back. So so this book over
I
here.
thought of you when I heard it,
What?
the Bruins.
Oh boy, yeah. Thank God they lost.
Whatever happened to Bobby or...
Excuse me, I'm leaving.
Well, the Rangers lost as well. So. And the Knicks lost, the Yankees lost. It was a bad day. So this book over this set of books, well, this translated to English. This is called the Sefer Chinuch. And this book has an anonymous author. No one knows who wrote it, but we know it's written by the Rishonim, or one of the codifiers. And he writes down in this book. It's a great book. If you just want to go through the 613 commandments, their source, where it comes from, you know, it's, the implications. It's very, very nice. I mean, there's 5 books because
Who gets the royalties?
no one. So, and he goes through, because there's 5 books of the Torah, and he goes through each parsha. You know, it's very, very, very good. No one knows who wrote it. No, there are theories. So, in text 2b, they write over here, Aaron Halevi of Barcelona. That's one of the stronger theories of who wrote this book. So he writes over here that the davening is a mitzvah. The mitzvah isn't to daven 3 times a day, or even to daven once a day. The mitzvah is that when you need something from God, you have to call out. You see text 2b. You can see all about him on the side of the page. So this is very good. So you see over here, it says, I can see it here, mitzvah 1 through 114. And then you see each one over here. So this is translated into English. It's very, very, very good. Everyone can read it. It says the Hebrew and the English, and it goes through here. So the precept, the mitzvah. It's interesting. We spoke about this. I opened this book at random. The mitzvah to speak about. I got this as a gift from the mitzvah to speak about the Exodus. You know, and he goes over here to tell about the departure from Egypt on the evening of 15th of Nisan. Very, this is worthwhile reading. Anyway, so he says it's a mitzvah, and he proves it from the Shema. The second paragraph of Shema, text number 3 says, and it will be when you, if you listen to the commandments, and I command you this day to love Hashem, to serve Him with all your heart and all your soul. What does it mean? To fake? No, so what he's saying over here. What does it mean? It means to daven. So this is some Maimonides, the Rambam, and the Sefer Chinuch hold it's a mitzvah, it's a commandment. The Ramban, Nachmanides, says no, it's not a mitzvah. Again, doesn't mean you don't have to do it. Look at text 4a. Behind over here. Oh, here goes. Ela vadai. So he says the entire notion of prayer isn't compulsory at all. Rather, God's kind to you, and He listens to prayer. So He listens and responds to any time we call out to Him. And he continues in text 4b, and he says the primary message of the verse, because now he has to answer. How do you translate? Not translate. How do you interpret? How do you learn the word? And you shall serve God with all your heart and all your soul. So he says it's not a commandment. He's saying is rather when you do a mitzvah, you shouldn't do it just, all right, I'll get by. You should do it with enthusiasm. You should do it with heart, namely with proper intention for His name and without any negative thoughts. We should never do any of the mitzvahs without intention or doubting whether they have purpose. This is what it means. This is the spirit of the verse. And you shall love God with all your heart and soul. Namely, there's a mitzvah to love God with a full heart. So much so that you're willing to risk your property and the lives of our soul. Interesting, by the way. We'll touch upon it a little later. Get back to it. Maimonides and Nachmanides have another argument. Is loving God a mitzvah? Or
It says in the Shema, to serve. But
that's not love. Serving is not love. Is believing in God a mitzvah? This is one of the arguments. is loving your friend, if love your fellow as yourself. Is that a mitzvah?
Believing
It's a good question.
So a commandment means
You're not supposed to worship idols.
no, something
No,
else.
but if
And
mitzvah,
you obviously believe in a monotheistic.
So Nachmanides says belief in God is not a mitzvah. It's a prerequisite. It's not a mitzvah. You can't command someone to feel something. Either you do or you don't. You can't command someone, according to Nachmanides, if you think about what God does for you, you love Him. You'll serve Him. But it's not you can't command someone. I command you to like pistachio ice cream.
you don't have to,
I like it too.
Saying,
It's not a very strong commandment because it happens
no, say,
by
but
itself.
right, but the idea is Nachmanides. So Maimonides says no, it's a commandment. You have to believe, and you have to love. Work on it, just like any other mitzvah. It's hard for you. Okay, work on it until you feel. I mean, the destination is the same.
Yeah.
But the question is it one of the 613 commandments? And then, because Maimonides counts, because he starts off his book, we just started the Rambam right, this past week. So Maimonides starts off listing all 613 commandments. So because other people cancel out some of his, okay, now what? Where how do you fill in this 613? So there's some mitzvahs the Rambam like gathers together, groups together. Like there's a lot of mitzvahs on Pesach, for example, right? You can't have chametz. You can't find chametz, right? You can't. All those are those one mitzvah, are those three mitzvahs. It's very interesting to see how they codified it and broke it up. Anyway, off the subject, so he says, davening is not a mitzvah. Nachmanides says it's not. If you think about what God does for you, then you want to connect to Him. Now you might say, okay, they're having a nice debate, but it's not just a nice debate. So, for example,
Is mitzvah, I'm trying to think.
mitzvah means commandment. Doesn't mean good deed.
Okay, all right.
That's one of the biggest problems in modern day semantics.
I've seen it several times within the past couple of days where people refer to mitzvahs as good deeds.
Yeah, so in modern day lingo, whatever it is, they use mitzvah as good deed, but that's not. No, usually what God tells you to do is good, but sometimes what God tells you to do is not good. It's painful, like giving a kid a circumcision. It hurts a lot.
Doesn't hurt you, well.
It hurts the
I was
kid.
gonna say it doesn't hurt you.
No, I'm saying, but it hurts the kid, right?
Maybe you've done that.
Yeah, but
yes.
no, I'm saying, but certain mitzvahs,
No, I know what you're
certain mitzvahs are not good. For example, I'm saying good. Fasting in Yom Kippur, it's not enjoyable. If I ask you tomorrow, don't eat. No, I want to eat.
Yeah, but fasting is said to afflict your soul, not to fast, and they interpret that to mean fasting.
They. First of all, that's not true. It says it in the Torah.
Well, that's what I had been, shall we say, led astray with, that the commandment is to afflict your soul
Okay, and how do you afflict your soul?
by fasting.
But no, but by the way, the idea of fasting is in the Torah. That's not learned out. That's straight out. The other things, not wearing leather, not showering, not anointing yourself, not lack of intimacy, all that. That affliction is learned out. Not eating is explicit in the Torah. That. But there's a bunch of other things that are not pleasant. Right? So, like for example, we had to wipe out the nation of Amalek. That's not a nice mitzvah. Right? You gotta do terrible things. But sometimes the Bezdin has to carry out capital punishment. That's a mitzvah. So I mean, people confuse it, and sometimes it leads to whole corruption of religion. Right? Sometimes turn the other cheek. It's not true. When someone's coming to kill you, you don't turn the other cheek. You stand up for yourself. I mean, that's a mitzvah. Self-defense is a mitzvah. You know. All right. Interesting. It's a whole argument also about what you should know. Anyway, let's go.
All we do is argue.
No, it's a discussion.
Thank you.
No, I mean,
It's a discussion.
no, it's a discussion amongst halachic authorities. Is it a mitzvah or is it a situation? So, for example, getting back to this, it's not just by the way. Who cares if it's a mitzvah or not? Let's say, for example, do ladies have to daven?
No. Oh, wait a minute.
If it's a mitzvah, then the answer is yes. If it's a mitzvah that when you need something you call to God, ladies are obligated.
But women aren't obligated to do things that are time dependent.
That's not time dependent.
Yeah, the
Look at-
yeah,
look
no,
at back-
lighting Shabbos candles are time is time
And
dependent.
that's a mitzvah specifically given to women. By the way, it's a mitzvah for everybody.
Okay.
But if you look at text 2b, the mitzvah is to call out to God when you need something. That's not time dependent.
No.
So the times of davening are rabbinical, the morning, afternoon, evening. But we're talking about the concept of davening. So if it's a mitzvah, the women are obligated. And by the way, the Alter Rebbe brings out in his code of Jewish law that women have to daven. Ali Shachars, Mincha, some people say Shachars or Mincha. Everybody holds that they're exempt from Marv. But Shachars, yeah, or at least something, yeah, has to daven. So it's not just semantics or a nice theoretical debate. It has no practical obligation. So there Yosef Albo, another Rishain, another codifier, and he writes in the book Sefer Yikarim. Yikarim means foundation, the book of foundational. It's interesting that with the rise of Christianity, and I shouldn't say the rise of Christianity, with the rise of Christian confrontation with Judaism, with Christian challenging Jewish validity, because truth is before the 900s, 800s, there's no such thing as Jewish philosophy, Jewish theology. What do you mean? We believe in one God, we keep Shabbos, we keep kosher. There were no books written about Jewish philosophy and Jewish theology. What's the principles of Jewish faith? Either everyone understood it or no one bothered to put it into words. But the problem is with the Arabs, they developed, they're very big into philosophy. They're very big into philosophy. So I think the first book of Jewish philosophy is written by a man named Rab Sadia Gaon in the 900s. First one. Because Jews thought, Torah doesn't have everything. What are you talking about? Of course we have it. But this came back and forth. I mean, this was a time where the Jews were forced into debates. If you look at the time where he lives, 1380 to 1444, this is 150 years after the famous debate between Nachmanides. You familiar with what I'm talking about? You should Google it. Actually, it's been translated to English, not so well, but there's a famous debate. The first and only open debate where the Jews were allowed to say whatever they wanted, and it was only because the King John of Castile, I think that was him, allowed the Ramban to say whatever he wanted. And at the end of the day, he would come home and he'd write down the debate. And the church, what happened was, there was a guy over there who was a Meshumad. He converted from Judaism to Christianity, and he went to this King John of Castile, and he convinced him that he can prove the validity of Christianity from the Judaic text. Now, this King John couldn't read Hebrew, couldn't read Aramaic, probably couldn't read Latin. Right? We're talking about the 1200s over here. Everybody was illiterate except the clergy. But if John knew better and he knew who Nachmanides was, it's not a fair fight. Nachmanides is one of the greatest Jewish people ever. Okay? I mean, you put anyone in the ring with him, they're going to lose. So Nachmanides destroyed him. It wasn't nice. He ripped him to bits. Not literally, I mean, his arguments. He made him look like an idiot. And while he was there, he has some very strong things against Christianity. I mean, very strong things. And when the church found out that Nachmanides wrote down, said you're only allowed to say it. You weren't allowed to write down. So you had to run away from Spain, and he came to Israel. So the famous the synagogue of Nachmanides, you were in Jerusalem, in the Rova, in the Jewish quarter, in the Jewish square there. There's the synagogue called Nachmanides Synagogue. He bought that land, and it stood there for 700 years until our beloved cousins, Jordanians, bombed it in 1948. And when did you go to Israel before this?
'70s.
In the 70s.
So if you remember, what was left was only the part of the dome,
Yeah,
the arch, part of the arch. That was, and so now it's all rebuilt. I remember when I went for my bar mitzvah in 1994, it was still there. They started rebuilding, but the thing was still there. So now, anyway, so Rabbi Yosef wrote this book, the Sefer Yikarim, because Jews had to know what is the fundamentals that we believe in. It's right, the books aren't written for no reason. You have books of Jewish law, Jewish practice. When a rabbi writes a book, the book of foundational Jewish belief, of certain basic concepts, right? It's kind of like a pamphlet. What do I got to know? Jews were also very simple people, by the way. Some of them worked in the field, and what do I got to know? So he writes over here. Anyway, I know we went off the subject. Sorry. Text 5a, and he writes, "This is something. It's only appropriate that anyone who believes in providence must believe in prayer, and will help them save them from misfortune. If one does not pray at the time of trouble, it is either because they don't believe in providence, or because they do believe in providence, but they God's ability to save them, which both of them are no good. So you have to pray." So he's saying, even if it's not a mitzvah, it's only logical. You need help, you ask for help. Who are you going to ask for help? Someone who can help you. So if you don't believe in God who can help you, that's a problem. If there's no God to help you, that's a problem. If you believe in God but He can't help you, that's also a problem. Obviously, you got to pray to God because He's the only one that can help you. And the third Chabad Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, says in text 5b, he says prayer is the foundation of our belief. Why? Because we believe in God, but it's not enough just to believe. Judaism talks about a relationship where a person understands. There's a verse that says, "Das Elokei Avicha," know God. You have to try to understand as much as possible. You have to have as much of a personal relationship. So davening, everything else you can sort of do. You light a candle, right? I had a lady in my office over there. Light Shabbos candles? No. So what does it take to light a candle? It takes 10 seconds. Just light a candle every Friday. You can go about, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more later. You can go do a mitzvah and not think about it. You do the mitzvah, but davening is the relationship. That's what that's what it is. So let me tell you a modern story. Okay, you familiar with the story from Simon Wiesenthal? You know Simon Wiesenthal, right?
Mhm.
Simon Wiesenthal, I think, was after the war. Everybody was in DP camps, and they arranged davening, a service. I forgot what it was. So one of the rabbis there, I forgot which rabbi it was, asked him. I think it was the guy named Rabbi Silver. Asked him if he's going to join. For some reason, Thal said no, he's not going to join. Why? Because he experienced something in the camp which horrified him. So there was a guy who snuck in a siddur. You're familiar with the story?
Mm-mm.
Guy snuck in a siddur. How he snuck in a siddur into the camp, I don't know. So when other prisoners found out he had a siddur, they wanted to use a siddur. So what did he do? He would charge people like a piece of bread or part of a piece of bread to use a siddur. So he says, if that's what religion means, to take people's last piece of bread, then I don't want any part of prayer. They turned to walk away, and the rabbi said, "Fool." In a nice way. Problem is in Yiddish, there are a lot of words for fool.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are derogatory, some of them are like silly. Better, silly. He says, why are you looking at the guy who rented out a siddur for bread? Why don't you look at all the people that were willing to give up a piece of bread in the camp?
To have the
Siddur. Simon Wiesenthal was in davening the next day. You realize, right? Davening is about a relationship. That's what it is. It's the only mitzvah where it demands heart. Every mitzvah you're supposed to have intent, and every mitzvah you're supposed to do it with emotion. But think about it this way: if you're watching the game, right, and you put on tefillin, you say Shema. So you say the bracha, say Shema, and your eye is kind of like, half there. The Heat are winning, the Heat are not winning, right? Are they playing tonight, tomorrow? When are they playing?
Tonight.
Tonight.
But they're missing a star player.
Yeah, he rolled his ankle.
Yeah. Jimmy Butler.
Jimmy Butler.
I hope he stays out the whole time he gets in it. He'll
No,
be better
no,
next season.
no, they said it's tonight and they're not gonna play again until Sunday or something, so he
Yeah,
has plenty
it's
of
the
time for
third
the
game.
ankle to
Nah, hopefully
rest.
it'll get affected. They're
No.
playing the Knicks.
Sorry.
Sorry.
All right, man's gotta believe. Oh, my Rangers are out, and the Knicks are. Truth is, before the playoffs started, I couldn't tell you one player on the Knicks. I don't follow during the season. Anyway, but if you're putting on tefillin, right, and you say the blessing, you say the Shema, but your eye is still kind of on the game, you did the mitzvah. You didn't do the mitzvah right,
Yeah,
but you did the mitzvah.
yeah.
Same thing with lighting Shabbos candle, right? You're supposed to do this and concentrate. But let's say you lit a candle, made the bracha. You did the mitzvah, yes or no?
Yeah, see, I never learned to do it the other way.
What do you mean? Watched in the game?
She shuts off the television before she lights the candle.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I never learned to do this, and my daughter does it.
Oh, really? I didn't know there was a.
She
How did you learn to light Shabbos candles?
just light them and say the blessing.
Ah, okay.
She learned because she went to an Orthodox Jewish boarding school for girls, for high
Right.
school.
Right.
That's where she learned.
Well, the reason why they do that, by the way, is because whenever you do a mitzvah, you're supposed to benefit from the mitzvah. You know by Havdalah we do this?
Yep.
Yeah,
Why?
'Cause
you're making
not
a-
lighting the candle for no reason.
Because you're making a bracha on the fire.
I mean,
So
you're using the
you have
fire.
exactly, you have to use so your nails are shiny.
right.
So the same thing is, so you're lighting Shabbos candles, so you cover, and when you open up the first thing you see is the light. That's one of the basic reasons why they do that. There are a few reasons.
Never learned to do that.
Well, never do this.
No, no.
Come over from the dark side. I'm kidding.
Hey,
I'm kidding.
You know.
I'm kidding.
no. Friday night he'll watch. I'll do it.
Yeah. So davening. So davening is seen in text number 6. Davening it requires heart. You can say things and everything else. Like for example, when you say Tehillim, Psalms,
Mm-hmm.
the words are holy, so you just say it. The word that they're powerful. When you're learning Torah, you have to understand that's learning. If you learn Talmud and you don't understand, you're not learning. Davening is not saying words in the book. It's words of the heart. You're supposed to understand what's going on. That is the mitzvah. And the Rambam says, text number 7, the commandment obligates each person to offer supplication and prayer every day, and all the praises to holy ones and petition for his needs and requests, and finally, give praise and thanks to Hashem for the goodness, each one according to his ability. So, I mean, if you're asking for something and you don't understand what you're asking for, then what kind of request is it? You got to know what you're saying. If I come to you and I use all these fancy words to praise and everything else, but I can see that that you don't understand what you're saying, then no. It reminds me of a story. Maybe I shouldn't tell a story. No. I won't tell a story. I'll tell a story off camera. What?
No, the last line. Each one according to his own ability.
So davening is the one thing. It's not about quantity. It's about quality. And I tell this to my kids, my boys, all the time. It's better to say less and to skip more. I say this to him every single Shabbos.
That reminds me of that story.
Now you're doing it.
It's infectious.
It's infectious. No, the man brings his son to shul
Yeah.
and on Shabbat, and they're praying, and the son is just repeating the Aleph Bet, and the father's trying to quiet the son,
Right.
and the rabbi says, "Don't quiet him. If that's what he knows, then let him say the Aleph Bet."
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly. So, I mean, so one second. While we're on the subject, the Hebrew is the best way to do it. And you mean it's kind of like going on the 595 in local, right? The Hebrew is the best way to do it. The rabbis who compiled the Siddur, they said this is the best way. However, it has to mean It has to mean something to you. Let's look what the Rebbe says. Text number 8. The Rebbe says like this: the mitzvah of prayer is unique from other mitzvahs. While one must indeed verbally articulate the words of prayer, that's not the mitzvah. The mitzvah is not to say. The mitzvah is to offer supplication and prayer to God. Now, supplication, praise, thanks, it's something you feel. Right? Going back is feeling. Can you command a feeling? No, right? So as you're saying over here, praise, you're saying thank you. And you should feel it. Now, it's true that all mitzvahs need to be performed with intention, obviously. But if one performs the mitzvah without intention, they have not discharged they have not discharged the Torah obligation. Still, this is only about the intentions that must be incorporated into the mitzvah, not the actual mitzvah itself. So you did the mitzvah without intention. You did the mitzvah without intention. So the mitzvah is lacking. But at the bare minimum, you check the box. By contrast, when it comes to prayer, the act of mitzvah is defined by feeling. So a person has to feel. So now, in order to feel, you have to be prepared. Because if you walk in and I say, Ira, say thank you. Thank you for what? Say thank you.
Okay, thank you.
What? In the olden days, by the way, I know this is in the olden days in the Jewish community. It says in the Gemara that a good teacher sometimes has to discipline a kid. So in the olden days, when a teacher hit a kid, the kid had to say thank you. So the kid should understand that the teacher's not doing it out of spite, out of anger. Discipline. My father told me a story. So my father was growing up in the 40s, right, in Montreal. He had a teacher. They hit him. Said, "Say thank you." No, I mean, my father wasn't getting it. My father could be a little bit stubborn, so he stood there, right, for a while. But the point of the matter is, saying thank you. You have to understand what you're saying thank you for. So to walk into davening and say thank you, that's how. That's why we offer on Shabbos to learn before davening. It's not just I'm trying to con people to come learn. The idea is when you learn before davening, it helps you get in the right frame of mind so you can say thank you. And this is what the Maimonides says. This is what it says in the Gemara. That the pious people, what would they do? They would sit before davening and they would think. What do you think about? You think about how dependent we are, because we get into the habit of thinking that the world revolves around us, and that we can't imagine the world surviving without us, and everyone in the world needs us. But then when you think about it, you realize that how the more you think about it, the less true it becomes. The circle becomes, and then you start thinking. Then you start thinking outwards. You start thinking how much you have, and you start being thankful. But that takes. So in America, you have one day, Thanksgiving. But instead of being thankful, what you have, you go to Target to buy a TV. Because being thankful is sometimes it's a little humbling, right?
You gotta watch all the football games.
Or watch a football game, right? This year, the Jets have Aaron Rodgers. They'll find a way to fail. All right. So this is really the meat of Judaism is. Yiddishkeit, Judaism is about connecting to Hashem. Every mitzvah is a channel. Every mitzvah is a chance to connect. So you have the body of the mitzvah, right? The tefillin, the lulav, the candle, whatever it is. But then you have the soul, the meat. You have the intent. So obviously you have to do it. But the point is, you do it with everything that it entails. Davening, that's the foundation, because it's all intent. It's all motivation. So the famous story with Alter Rebbe, which I'm sure I said before. Now, Alter Rebbe was 20. He didn't know. You see this text number 10. He didn't know where to go. Should he go to Mezrich, or should he go to Vilna? In Vilna, in Vilna was the Gaon of Vilna, Rabbi Elio Akayan Kramer. And he is known as a great scholar. In Mezrich, you had the Daver of Mezrich, the Magid, and by the Chassidim, the talk was they taught you how to daven. The final paragraph of text 10, the Alter Rebbe said to himself, the Hashem blessed me with making the right choice, and I became a devoted disciple. Oh, sorry, the second class paragraph. I debated as where to go. I knew that in Vilna, one was taught how to study. The message, one could learn how to pray. The study, I was somewhat able. Excuse me. But a prayer, I knew very little. So I went to Mezrich and says, "Thank God, I made the right decision. Thank God, right? After following this class, we have the tiny class, which is all about." So the Rebbe says something very, very strong. So today is the 11th of Iyar. You see, this is coming up in 2 weeks. The 23rd of Iyar. This is a comment. It's the book Kol Hayom Yom. Text 11. Day to day. And the Rebbe makes a very strong comment. People think that, I once heard this from somebody, that, you know when a relationship between a husband and wife breaks down, one of them rolls their eyes at the other one.
What did he say?
So when someone,
One of them rolls their eyes.
that means when a spouse says something, and you think that my spouse is an idiot or stupid or whatever, that's the beginning of the breakdown of a relationship. Maybe they're not getting divorced right now, but you know they're in trouble. Rebbe says, you know when a person in Judaism is in trouble? When they stop davening. Davening sets the table for everything else. That's why you wake up in the morning. So that's why it's so important to daven in the morning, because it sets the day for everything. He says the first stage in a person's spiritual decline, heaven forbid, is the lack of effort with serving Hashem in prayer. Then, because davening, prayer is about enthusiasm. So when you lack enthusiasm in davening, then you lack enthusiasm in everything. You can't have enthusiasm in learning. You can't have enthusiasm in every other mitzvah you do, because you don't have the basic connection. See, even the routine performance of mitzvahs becomes burdensome. One hurries through observance and loses a taste for Torah study. The very atmosphere becomes materially oriented, and it goes without saying that a person in such a state cannot positively influence others at all, which is really why we're here. We're here to create an environment. Now, obviously, no one's born, like we were talking about before, no one wakes up in the morning thinking about the other person. You wake up in the morning, if I come to you, Barbara, I need a cup of coffee. Whoa, give me, you ever see those cups of coffee? You get the cups of coffee, like in the beginning, don't talk to me, not yet, soon, all the way to the bottom, now I'm ready, right? These are those disposable cups, I think in Walmart, cute, right? Basically, don't talk to me before I have my coffee. Because when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you think about is yourself. That's natural. The idea of being thankful and thinking outside yourself takes time in a day.
Yeah, but don't you say
But
as
that's
soon as you wake up?
that's the
So
idea.
what?
But that's the idea. You wake up in the morning.
Yeah, well, I do too, but that's what I'm
But
saying.
my phone somehow took a picture. I didn't touch it.
Something just happened.
Yeah, my phone.
It went away.
The phone decided to take a picture. Thank you, Mr. Jobs. I don't know. I didn't touch the picture. I didn't touch anything. It started to take a picture. This is the ghost of it.
Well, that was the first prayer you learned as a kid.
Because you wake up in the morning, the first thing why was it implemented? Because the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is you take your life for granted. Of course I'm here. So the first thing you do when you wake up and you say, you know something? Maidani, I thank God for being alive. But the idea of being thankful and thinking outside yourself, that's something that you have to, it takes time. It takes time. Right? Your kid wakes up in the middle of the night, you love the kid and everything else, but you really want that kid to go back to sleep. You're shaking your head, please go back to sleep, right? And everything else.
That's why they invented the baseball bat.
Right. Or you get very thick walls, right? Or you unplug the monitor, or whatever.
No, he unplugged the
The hearing aid, right? Yeah.
What?
But the point is that you can't rush into daven. Davening needs preparation. I remember I once had a discussion with somebody. He didn't learn Chassidus, right? So he was once giving me a hard time that he was at a Chabad shul and they davened late because they were learning before davening, and I tried to explain to him that the learning before davening, it's not something extra. The learning before davening, that sets up the davening. When you learn before, when you take time to prepare, to think about God, what He does, and whatever it is, the greatness, and so on and so forth. When you think about yourself, how He affects you, then you think about something greater than you. I tried to explain to him that it opens up a whole new way of davening. Davening is a totally different davening. He didn't stop. No, but it says in Kol Jewish law. Finally, I told him, I said, you know what your problem is? I told him, you don't know who God is. He didn't like that. He said to me, are you saying I don't believe in God? I said, no. You believe in God. You don't know who you believe in. He didn't like that. The conversation was over because. But the point that I made, you're giving thanks. Who are you giving thanks to? Where's the relationship? So Alter Rebbe talks about this in the laws of Talmud Torah. This is text number 12. He says now, actually it's interesting, today's Rambam is a person has an obligation to study Torah. And every moment you have a person has that obligation. Now if a person, he says over here in text 12, if the pious people would spend so much time preparing for davening, 1 hour before they would prepare, then they would daven. Then another hour afterwards they would internalize. So the 3 prayers a day, it's 9 hours of davening. So when you have time to learn. But what's the point of learning? So you learn that God should be a reality, right? But if you daven right, then you're learning. You can accomplish a lot more in learning a lot less time, because your learning is different. Your whole mind is different. It's not you and him. The whole relationship is different. But
the first part of teaching is to teach somebody how to learn.
Right. So using an example, if you can teach a student to identify with the material, not that it's something outside of him, but something what age did you teach? Remember?
I taught first, second, fourth, and then adults.
Adults. Okay. So my kids are in high school. One of the things they learn in high school is algebra.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids, how is this going to help me in life?
Yep.
I've had that question.
Yep.
Right?
I had a student who was learning geometry. He was blind, and he's learning geometry. He says, "How is this going to help me?" And he said he wanted to be a lawyer. I says, "You're going to need this because depending on what type of law you go into, you need to have an understanding. If it's coming up with something that's technical and scientific, you need to have some understanding of that. So that's why you're learning it."
So I'm saying, but that's exactly what we're saying. You have to make it relatable. You have to make it personal. So in order for the Torah to be personal, because once you develop an affinity to the topic, whatever the topic is, the subject matter, then you can acquire that information a lot faster. As long as there's the barrier, the us and them, it's a lot harder. So if you spend time davening and you make the material to your Torah, it's your Eibusher, it's your God, and you can add a relationship, and you love him and you appreciate him and everything else, then it becomes a lot easier to learn Torah. Now, what I just said, I said in 2 sentences, but it's a lifelong fight. You have to work on yourself. Because again, every day you wake up, and you got to start from zero again. Because you wake up, you take yourself for granted. The first thing you want to do, you want to eat. You want to have your coffee. And every day is the exact same fight. Actually, this is not something we're going to talk about in Tanya. Every day it's the exact same thing. That's why davening is called avodah. Work. Work means you schwitz. You sweat. It's not easy. Like the Rebbe says in text number 13, page 54. And he says, inasmuch as the very act of prayer is created through human work, it only makes sense that the prior change occurs in the person who prays. The principal idea of prayer is the notion that one stands before a servant. when a person clears out any distracting thoughts and pours out his heart to God, and alone, that alone changes them from the previous standing. They're now in a higher space, a changed person. So you're gonna say, okay, so when I daven, I'm a good person, and then after davening, I'm the same Shmuel I was before. But that's not true, because when a person davens and davens properly, there's a mark. In Kabbalah, there's something called a karkafta shleihunach tefillin, a skull that didn't put on tefillin. So Kabbalah says when a person puts on tefillin, and this is an example of one mitzvah, but it's every mitzvah. When you do a mitzvah and you think, okay, I took off the tefillin or whatever mitzvah, I stopped doing the mitzvah, that's it. I'm devoid. It's not true. There's a mark. There's a mark when you did a mitzvah. So when you daven, although you finish davening, you close the siddur, and you walk out of shul, but now there's something that carries you throughout the day, and now you can be a different person throughout the day. You can make better decisions. So now we can get back to the argument between Maimonides and Nachmanides. Maimonides says it's a mitzvah. Nachmanides, Ramban said it's not a mitzvah. And I can understand why. It's not a mitzvah. This is the foundation. You can't have any other mitzvah without connection. Just like we said before, believing in God, according to Nachmanides, is not a mitzvah. You can't have a commandment without a commander. Right? So you can't have the commandments are a connection. I mean, it's the same thing. Is without a connection, without relationship, there's no commandment. Why am I doing it for you? You asked me to shake a branch in a lemon. Why would I do something crazy? Move out of your house into a hut for 7 days. Some sugar and coke. Get out of here. No way. Don't eat bread for 8 days, 7 days. Only eat crackers. You can buy a loaf of bread for $4. Buy a pound of matzah for $30. So when you say it that way, no, when you say it that way, it doesn't make any sense. Why am I doing it? It's because of the relationship. It's not a mitzvah. Every mitzvah has davening in it. That's what he's saying. And the example is, so just like there are 613 commandments, and there are 248 do's, and 365 do nots. So it says that's corresponding to the 248 limbs of the body, and 365 muscles, sinews, and arteries. Now, in the count of the 248 limbs, the spinal cord is not counted. Pretty important, don't you think?
No backbone, huh?
Huh?
No backbone.
No backbone. It counts the vertebrae. Doesn't count the spinal cord. Why? This is what the Alter Rebbe says in text number 15. Because the spinal cord ties everything together. You don't have a body, you don't have a person without the spinal cord. This is what he says. Check out text 15. The spinal cord that runs through the vertebrae is not on the list of limbs, and yet it's what sustains and bridges all the limbs from the head all the way to the hips. It is what delivers life-giving energy from the brain to the rest of the body, by way of hips and thighs, all the way to the feet. Heaven protect us from the consequence of the spinal cord being severed. And so it is the same thing, analog with the mitzvahs, which are 248 limbs of the King of Hashem. Our sages declare that all mitzvahs need kavanah, and kavanah is prayer. Prayer is the inner kavanah of every other mitzvah. It is the mainstay that supports and animates all the active mitzvahs. It's precisely like it is the spinal cord for the other mitzvahs. So this is what it means to daven. That's why prayer means. The reason why we don't like the definition of prayer, because prayer means you need something from God, right? Oh shoot! I have a dollar in my bank account. I have an American Express bill tomorrow. I better ask for more money, right? I'm hungry, but ask. But otherwise, I'm fine. No problem. That's a bank. That's what prayer is. Davening is not prayer. Davening is about connection. So the kid goes away to college, only calls home when he needs something, right? Parents get annoyed. Why could that? That's when you remember me, right? The famous joke. In the days of, I can tell you guys because you guys will appreciate this. The days of collect calling.
Oh, what?
Collect calling.
Call collect.
Oh, call collect?
Yeah.
Collect. Oh, you mean when you make a phone call?
Yeah.
Yeah, phone call.
So the kid calls his home, doesn't have money for the phone call, right? So, and he knows that his parent doesn't want to accept the charges. So he calls home, and they say, after the beep, state your name. He says, hi, it's Bill, I need money. So the father says, I'm sorry, I didn't hear. So the operator tells the kid, it's okay, please speak slower. After the beep, say your name. Hi, it's Bill, I need money. Sorry, I didn't hear. Again, please speak slowly and clearly so the party on the other understand, on the other side can understand. After the beep, please say your name. Hi, it's Bill, I need money. Sorry, I didn't understand. So the operator getting frustrated. He says, I think it's your son Bill. He's asking for money. So he says, oh, you hear him? You send him money.
Very good.
So davening is about connection. When you go to daven, it's about, and that's why by davening, by that midah, we don't answer our phones. Obviously we don't wink, we don't nod, we learned this today, right? We learned this today. You don't do anything else. Why? Because you're in a state of connection. Right now, God, I'm with you. Nothing else in the world matters. That's the way you got to approach davening. Questions? Comments?
Collect call.
Keep it to yourself.
Collect call for you from it's the boy Oswald.
Exactly. Hey, when we were, remember times